Dak in that situation, last drive of the game. What's the feeling you guys have with him out there?
Comfortable, to say the least. Very comfortable. You got your starting quarterback out there leading the charge on a 2-minute drive to win the game. I don't think it get any better than that. And, we won. It feels good.
CeeDee Lamb, Cowboys receiver, talking about the relationship with Dak Prescott. Always better to win than lose. They had a good loss week one, made them feel that they could be competitive, that they could be relevant, that they went toe-to-toe with the Bucs, and they went to L.A. and beat a Chargers team that is going to be a very good team this year. That was a big win for the Cowboys on the road, place where there's a lot of Cowboys fans, and Cowboys fans that showed up were happy with the outcome, 20-17 victory, and more importantly, Mike, not 58 passes for Dak Prescott. He's on a much more reasonable pace now than he'd been because he only threw the ball 27 times yesterday.
So, we've seen him throw a ton, and we've seen him throw for a ton of yards when he needs to, and we see the weapons that they have. Yesterday it was CeeDee Lamb, who was the guy, I think, 9 targets and 8 receptions. But you just said it, 27 passes, so let's throw the runs in there, 31 runs. That's the balance you're looking for. And I will continue to say it, and not just because he's a domer, but Zach Martin is the best guard in all of football. And Zach Martin was back yesterday. And between him and Tyron Smith out at left tackle, who at this point, both of those guys are healthy and they need to stay that way, they ran for 198 yards, and it was actually Pollard, who had more of the day running, went over 100 yards on 13 carries. But this O-line is such a key, and when they can do this, because you have a great back in Ezekiel Elliott, but as I mentioned, Pollard had over the 100 yards, so you have two. You have the dual threat back there. But if you can do this, man, does it make Dak Prescott's job so much easier. A quarterback behind a line and in front of a running back that can have a running game, knowing what you can get out of play action, knowing the freeze that's going to put on the D-line, knowing that you're going to get the backers to step up, knowing you can get an extra half a second to a second on a play action pass if you're running the ball well, can make all the difference in the world. And when this team does what they do, and how about the last drive? 11 plays to go 49 yards. The clock management at the end, I have no clue what Mike McCarthy was doing, and ends up setting Zuerlein up for a 56-yarder when they could have got closer than that. But Zuerlein makes a phenomenal kick there, but a great drive to end the game and an incredible balanced attack on offense.
Yeah, Zuerlein gets the chance to atone for last week when he missed a couple of kicks. And you mentioned Pollard. I'm a firm believer that Ezekiel Elliott's contract protected him from being cut this year because the way it's structured, all of his money this year became guaranteed last March. Not this March, but last March. And I think if they'd have had a window to move on from Zeke, they may have considered it because Pollard looks like the guy right now. Pollard has the burst. Pollard is that, and we saw them cycle through running backs, and that's the way you got to do it. You got to be willing to say, hey, we're willing to move on, and we're going to go on to the next guy. And Tony Pollard is looking like the next guy, and they benefit from having Elliott around. He can still do some good things, but he was the better of the two yesterday, and I have a feeling we're going to be saying that multiple times over the balance of the season.
Do you think when the numbers are right, you think they're done with Zeke Elliott?
I think after this year they may be done with Zeke Elliott. I think, contractually that because the guarantees that right. Rolling guarantee is now over. That portion of the contract is over. But hey, I'm a big believer because people say, hey, you advocated that he should hold out, and look, he hasn't been the same since he held out. Well, but he got paid. And you if you don't hold out, if you don't draw the line in the sand, then maybe you're DeMarco Murray, or you just get to the end of your contract and they say, thanks for the memories, see you later. Good luck getting your money elsewhere. So he did what he had to do to get his money, and he got a great contract that's given him more longevity in Dallas than he would have otherwise had, I believe. But Pollard getting it done, Zeke getting it done yesterday, Dak doing enough. CeeDee Lamb is looking like the best young receiver in the NFL right now. He had the 8 catches you mentioned, 81 yards, and they're 1-1. And in the NFC East, hey, we'll take 1-1. They're 1-1. The Eagles are 1-1. Washington's 1-1, and the Giants are still trying to figure out where they're going to go. But they're it's not as bad as last year, I don't think, but it's still going to be as competitive as it was last year in that division, Mike.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people were putting Washington up there, and Washington, because of their defense, and that defense hasn't been what a lot of people thought it was going to be, what it looked like on paper. That's what I always say. On paper, you can talk all you want, but then you get on the field and you have to execute. Sometimes it can be different. And that defense, has not been living up to, the old air quotes as to what it looked like on paper. But we'll see. That'll stay competitive, save, I'm sure, for the Giants there. But also the one thing, as coaches, you'll always look at, what can I do? Instead of just patting my team on the back for a win, you find the things that went wrong, and there's always some things to correct. And also, you should note from the Chargers, hey, gang, this was a close game. We had to drive down for a final field goal against a team who had 2 penalties wiped out on penalty, or 2 touchdowns, wiped out on penalties. They got a field goal for one and a turnover for the other. So 2 touchdowns gone, and they had 12 penalties. So the Chargers were undisciplined in this game and had those, and part of that undiscipline with the penalties cost them the chance at 2 touchdowns. So while it was a good win for the Cowboys, you have to look and say, we were in a pretty good position because the other team was making some boneheaded mistakes.
And you mentioned that the Washington defense, not as good as we thought it was going to be. The Cowboys defense, much better than last year. Couldn't have been any worse than last year, but extremely improved. And that Micah Parsons pick, it's not exactly Magic Johnson in the 1980 NBA Finals playing every position at one time or another. But to take Micah Parsons and say, you know what, we're down to Marcus Lawrence. He's out with a broken foot. We're down Randy Gregory. He's on the COVID reserve list. Hey, Micah, you played defensive end in high school. Go ahead and play defensive end today. And he does it, and he does it well. It's amazing. He may have won Defensive Rookie of the Year in week 2, Mike.
So what's happened to that position? That position has changed over the years to having big players to where the 260-pounder, 250-pounder was too big to play linebacker and too small to be DN. But that's now what you have. You have outside pass rushers anywhere from 230 to 260, sometimes bigger depending on the athlete. But you can do that with a Micah Parsons. And you're seeing the versatility of players. Some teams like to do it more than others, like the Patriots. Bill Belichick loves to play his defensive players at different positions to be versatile and be able to step in. Micah Parsons is a good enough athlete, and these players today are incredible athletes to be able to do that, to have the ability to all of a sudden put your hand on the ground and, make some plays. Again, get some pressure. Quickness is now the big thing on the outside. It's not necessary bulk, though at times when there was going to be running situations, he wouldn't be on the field because it's tough to ask him to stand up right on the line to an offensive tackle. But I thought he did a nice job. You knew he was going to try inside moves, outside moves, put pressure on the quarterback. It just shows the versatility you have in that player.
Hey, Mike, I can remember a time when they called guys like that tweeners in a very derisive way.
That's exactly right.
He doesn't have a home. Well, okay, fine. We make our home to fit him. We have a versatile defense where we use him different ways and we confuse the offense. Instead of trying to cram the square peg into the round hole, we just make a new hole. And this is what our guy's going to do, and we're going to get the most out of his skills. We're not going to label him. We're just going to let him be a football player. And we're going to put him wherever it's effective. And it's amazing how it's taken so many years for coaches to kind of drop that stubbornness and embrace great players. Just embrace a great player and figure out how to use him.
One of the first ones, and I covered him in college at Syracuse, was Dwight Freeney. Dwight Freeney was that 255, 260-pounder that, again, was too big to be a linebacker, but at that time was kind of too small to be that defensive end. Listen, I played, Reggie White was a D end at 310, and Clyde Simmons was 290, 295 on the other side. Here's a 6'1", 6'2", 255, 260-pounder in Dwight Freeney, like the whirling dervish, the Tasmanian devil out there, just hitting the quarterback. And you're right, GM's going, yeah, okay, maybe that can work with a smaller guy who's a little quick out there against really big offensive tackles to get those guys in space. So I'm glad it's happened. It was going to happen. It was the natural kind of evolution of the player. Players are such bigger, stronger, better athletes than they've ever been and have the ability to be more versatile than they ever have in the past.
And I remember when Freeney came out in the draft, there were scouts that would not give him the time of day. And they're like, I'll just run the ball right at him and you'll put him in the front row. He may have been the key, as you said, to changing the perception and crafting a reality where we got a guy who can play football. We'll figure it out later. Just give me great football players, and I'll figure it out. I'll blow up my system to accommodate the fact that I got some great football players, and I'll, as a coach, figure out how to deploy it.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.